Welcome to episode 183 of the Formula One Grid Talk podcast. Today we are here to preview the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. My name is Ruby Price, and joining me today we have Tom Downey from Everything F1,
Hello.
Jawad Yaqub from Hit the Apex podcast,
Hello.
and Ray from Every Ray Day Motorsport.
Hello.
Hello. First, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll shout out all of you who do to say thanks. And if you're one of the 74% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. So that's right, Australia is back for 2022, and long has it been missed. Whilst we're used to seeing this staple circuit open the Formula One calendar, the 3.8 mile circuit, I'm reading the wrong line. That's great. This year we arrive in Melbourne for round 3 of the championship, and we still don't know who the favourites are to take the crown at the end of the season. But first, let's start off with a bit of news. Returns are in full swing, as earlier this week it was announced that the 2023 will see Formula One race in Las Vegas. The 3.8 mile circuit around the Vegas Strip will be the third race in the USA next season, alongside Miami and COTA, and interestingly, will be held on a Saturday night. So, Jawad, Saturday night race. Formula One is a global sport, and I'm sure being an Aussie, you're already used to some pretty crazy time schedules. How do you see people responding to this big change? The last Saturday race we had in Formula One was the 1985 South African Grand Prix.
I certainly hope they respond positively. Obviously, as you mentioned, there is let's call it a minority of people, strong minority of people all over the world, and in this part of the world that do have to watch Formula One, the sport that they love at such strange times and whatnot. We actually here benefit from the Saturday night race there because it's on, I think, at 4 p.m. in the afternoon for us on a Sunday. So it still feels like Grand Prix Sunday for us, even though it will be Saturday night. But it's truly, I guess, when you think of it as a world championship, you want to go to other venues all over the world, explore new cities or continents. Hopefully, we can explore other continents that haven't been on the championship for a while as well in the future. But for Liberty Media, is such a big tick, given the fact that, they wanted to increase the sports present in the US, and now they've got a third race happening from next year. So I hope certainly we get a positive reaction. I've always said I'm not a fan of, expanding the calendar too much, because it's just going to become such a load for the crews and the staff that travel with the sport and the teams. So, I just hope, we get a good first race. They're only on a 3-year deal as well. So if it doesn't work out, then obviously they can put that one in the dustbin.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you as well about expanding the calendar so much, whilst also, claiming to be moving forward with making Formula One and eco, I don't want to say friendly, but at least neutral sport. Whilst at the same time this season, they travel to America on 3 separate occasions across the year, when there's obviously reasons behind it, such as, weather and climate, but have them all together if you're going to do that. But expanding the calendar is quite the task that limited media have got, and it seems to be something that they are absolutely doing. But Tom, Jawad touched on this a little bit. We've heard before that Formula One has struggled to crack America. Do you think that this time, obviously there's 3 races happening next season, have they finally done it?
I think F1 had begun to do it even before we had sort of this talk of additional races in America. If you look at Austin from last year, right? Look at how big the crowds were. Look at how many people were there. Look at how sort of well populated that event was. Obviously helped by Martin Brundle's running with that rapper lady on his grid walk. F1 is definitely growing in America, and it has been growing steadily for the last couple of years. Sometimes, maybe to me, it seems a bit not. I don't want to say like Americanized, because that's very stereotypical. But it seems like it's got a lot more sort of theatre around it, or it's got a lot more sort of pantomime. Maybe it's like there was one year when they had Vettel and Hamilton walking out sort of like either side of the trophy. And I was waiting for, I think the only thing it was really missing was like Randy Orton coming out and trying to, KO one of them or something. But it was, hopefully it's a good thing. And Vegas, is one of those sort of like iconic things. Having seen the circuit, would it present the best racing? I don't know. It's going to be pretty flat, because I've been to Vegas. It is relatively flat. Unless the pit lane goes through the Grand Canyon or something, I don't really see how it's going to, have too much elevation change. But in terms of the sort of commercial event, much like places like Monaco, we've got Miami coming up. It's going to do good for the sport, I think, because it's going to bring more people to Vegas. Yeah, okay, they're probably not going to sit in the casinos, with their credit cards sort of affixed to the machines. But it hopefully it will do good for the sport. It'll do good for F1, which is beginning to sort of lay down some roots in America. Plus, obviously, with Haas being an actual American team, not a Russian team like they were last year, and the talks of Andretti maybe, not even maybe, but with Andretti at some point coming into F1, just a question of how he's coming into F1. It's going to grow. It is growing and it is doing well for F1. Whether Vegas is the best race, I don't know, but Formula One can't just appease the sort of diehard, somewhat elitist, old school fans who are like, oh my God, it's Spa or nothing. There are good modern circuits out there. So, they have to please everyone, and it's going to bring money. Ultimately, a race like this is going to bring money into the sport, which is going to keep circuits like Spa, Silverstone, Monza going.
Yeah, a very, very good point. It has been said a lot of times, but cash is king. And to fund a sport like this, you need cash, which is where a lot of interesting sponsorship deals come from. But Ray, just a last touch on Las Vegas. We were expecting a sort of car park circuit when, it was all teased, but this is more of a tour of Las Vegas, with like the circuit taking drivers past all sorts of landmarks like casinos, MSG Sphere Arena, Paris, Las Vegas Resort, and of course the Caesars Palace Hotel. Tom touched on this a little bit. It will probably be a particularly flat circuit, but tell me, what do you expect from the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix?
What do I expect about the race? I think the first thing I'll probably say expect is ticket prices will be very expensive because we are talking about Las Vegas here, and it's not a cheap area. It's definitely not easy to close the roads because it's a night race. So Singapore is also a night race. It's really quite expensive to actually close the roads, and with all the lighting infrastructure you're going to have to install, it's not going to be cheap. And I think when it comes to the tourists, I think it's going to do a lot for Las Vegas. Like the Singapore Grand Prix actually did a lot for tourism in Singapore, and every year we actually have a lot of tourists coming in just for the race. So much so that they actually renewed it, once again after COVID has started to get a bit better worldwide. So I think it will actually benefit Las Vegas greatly. And in terms of the racing, like Tom said, we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I think fingers crossed that with the current new cars that we have, so far the racing has been pretty good, and fingers crossed that it will continue to be good in 2023. And while Vegas may be a flat circuit, hopefully we'll get some kind of action, somewhat like we see in Baku.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm envisioning something a bit Baku-ish as well in terms of street circuit walls, very tight and twisty in some sections, and that 2 kilometer straight. I think not 2 kilometer, 2 mile straight. However long that straight is, that's going to either see some great racing or it's going to see DRS. And we've had a lot to talk about with DRS, but just one last thing on the news as well. I think I speak for everyone when I'm going to extend F1 Grid Talks, love and support to the family of Max Mosley who passed this week. It's, a name that is synonymous with Formula One, and, it's unfortunate that we have to talk about this kind of thing. But as I say, the love and support to Max Mosley's family from Formula One Grid Talk. But yeah, moving back on to Australia then. So, Jawad, it's a slightly different Australian circuit. They've done a lot of reprofiling. They've changed some of the corners and stuff, which were planned for last season, but we didn't quite get it because of COVID. Yeah. What do you expect to see this weekend coming up?
Don't know what I'm expecting. I'm hoping that it'll be a lot more exciting. So over the last few years, in particular with the previous era of car, a lot of the criticism of Albert Park was that overtaking was not really a thing that was seen, and the races were boring, yada yada. But we've had such great action so far in the first couple of races with this new generation of car. See how two cars can fight, and when one passes, the other one has a chance of getting back past, pretty much straight away, rather than having to wait the next lap, or, the tires are gone and whatnot. Most of the corners, they have actually widened them, which is good to see there. They've changed some of the camber as well. We've gotten rid of the turn 9 and 10 chicane too. So it's effectively curved straight. And then they're talking about possibly even having a fourth DRS zone. So, get our heads around that being a thing. So, given the fact that these changes, like you said, were planned for last year and for the previous generation car, I think with the new car this year, it's only going to make Albert Park great, a great spectacle. And, I'm obviously gutted that it's not the first race of the year like we're used to it, but it's so good to see it back. The atmosphere you can feel in the city and everything, that people are excited, and the fact that it's sold out as well. I think it's the first time in more than a decade that they've actually sold out all your weekend tickets as well. So again, that is that influence that Tom talked about with Austin being sold out, not necessarily because of American fans, but just because of how exciting the championship has been the last couple of years. And we've got such a great battle on our hands at the moment between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. So Albert Park is going to be a buzz come Thursday, Friday this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, 2 years without it on the calendar, and it has certainly been missed. I always imagine, waking up at early o'clock in the UK to miss half of the Australian Grand Prix because I inevitably fall asleep because I'm not used to the clocks changing. But Tom, how much is Formula One needed to be back in Australia, do you think?
I think to say needed to be back in Australia, maybe not needed, but I think it is great that they are going back there. It's the first home race that Danny Rick is going to have had for 2 years. It's mad to think that the last time he had a home race, it was his first race since he left Red Bull, because it was his first year with Renault. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It's like trying to wrap your head around that one. It's just like that puts into perspective how long it's been, because it was 2019, the last time we raced there. But no, it's good everyone's going there. As Jawad sort of touched on, there were some changes to the circuits, when you're widening corners, getting rid of that sort of fast left-right, which is turn 9, 10. I actually quite like that section, playing it on this one game, but I also used to just have to yeet it straight across the grass. And this is why I'm not a professional driver. But yeah, no, it's it's good, because F1 is a global sport, and it needs to be in pretty much each continent. I mean, I don't think we'll have a race in the Antarctic anytime soon. But to have something back in that sort of Oceania region is only a good thing. And it does feel a bit weird not having Australia open the calendar this year. I mean, aside from 2019, 2020, obviously, when the seasons were somewhat curtailed, I think the last time we didn't have Australia open a quote-unquote regular season was 2012, 2011, something around then. As far as my memory could recall, it's always gone Australia, Bahrain, and then China, or Australia, China, Bahrain, sort of that grouping of races. No, it's good. I'm looking forward to going back there. Obviously, it's nice for our for our somewhat more easterly based colleagues such as Jawad and Ray that they can watch a race at a respectable hour, and make us Europeans suffer. I'm going to be sitting there at the TV with that cocktail sticks in my eyes to hold my eyelids open. Try and make sure I get off Call of Duty nice and early the night before so I can get a good sleep in. But yeah, no, it's good. It's a decent track, not necessarily had the best races recently. I think the sort of like the biggest thing I can remember recently was when Alonso had that huge impact in 2016 with, I think it was Gutierrez in Haas's first race. And then, aside from that, I haven't really I can't remember the last time we had a proper sort of banger there. But regardless, it'll be good to get back there. It's nice to get these sort of, after so many years of turmoil effectively with the F1 calendar, it's nice to be getting back to Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one of the things as well, Ray, that's going to make this Australian Grand Prix is the fact that, they are bringing back the spectacle of the Australian Grand Prix. Like, it's more of a matter of, as Tom has mentioned, historically, it's not really been known for the best racing, but it's been known for the association of the start of the season. One of the things as well that I think is going to work for it is the returning to Australia aspect of it. But really, we've seen this season that cars can follow and race. And I think that has the potential to make this Australian Grand Prix something of a hopefully classic, touch wood.
I agree. Yeah, I think it could be a classic because this is the first time I think we are going to a circuit in Asia for some time. So I mean, or rather to the eastern part of the world for some time, and it's probably one of those mainstay tracks that haven't exactly been the most exciting with the current with previous generation of cars. So I think there'll be a lot of eyes to see. Will the changes, how effective the new technical regulations are, and allowing cars to overtake and race. Like I said, it previously overtaking, wasn't always a really good thing in Australia. Action wasn't always there, but yeah, if the cars can race well in Australia, I think on some of the more tighter circuits like Singapore or maybe even Monaco, we will know that that these races will probably be more exciting than how they were like in the previous era of F1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the new regulations so far appear to have worked. And, if we can, even speculating that we can see actual legitimate overtakes in Monaco, that's going to be pretty, I think it's something that circuit, and especially based on its recent reputation, will need. But anyway, sticking with Australia, let's start talking about some cars. Ferrari currently leading the championship, Jawad. They've got 1 win, 4 podiums. We expected it going into the season after testing, but they are absolutely here, and they are currently sort of just dominating. But that's also down to the unfortunate demise that Red Bull had in Bahrain. But this is Ferrari's championship, I would say, right now. Do you think they're going to capitalize on that?
Certainly, yes. Still a bit too early to say because Ferrari do often fall into habit of not being able to string together the entire season. They'll make it to kind of the midway point and then drop off, as we've seen in previous seasons when Sebastian Vettel was fighting Lewis Hamilton. But Australia is somewhere they've been successful for quite a number of years. Even going back to Sebastian Vettel when he was there at Ferrari, won in 17 and 18 back to back. There's such a strong, almost Tifosi-like following in Melbourne in particular for Ferrari as well. So, you'll probably see more or as much red as you would see orange for Daniel Ricciardo. So it's definitely somewhere that I can see them put their foot down. I would like to see Carlos Sainz have a better weekend, or a version of what he thinks is a better weekend. He obviously doesn't feel like he's on the same level as his teammate at the moment, but that's also just the brilliance of Leclerc. Having spent 2 years not being able to compete for wins and for the pointy end of the grid, we're seeing this really, really strong Leclerc out, and Max is going to have his hands full if can't get it together this weekend. And Albert Park has typically been a circuit in the hybrid era which Red Bull haven't really succeeded at. I think they've only had one podium since 2014, which came at the last race we had in 19 with Max, which was the first podium for a Honda powered car as well. So, that record doesn't speak very kindly of them, but, they're going to have to do a bit of work to turn that around. But yeah, Ferrari very much looking the favourites.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, I can't believe I'm still saying this after all of the trouble that we had. Well, I say that they had, pre-season, but Mercedes currently P2 in the constructors. I know it's not likely to last for much longer unless these upgrades that they're supposedly bringing to the Australian Grand Prix, fully switch on the car. They're bringing a new floor, I think it is, and they'll obviously be making other upgrades as well. Do you see them being able to claw back this gap that they've got this weekend?
Nah, basically. No, they've got... There's something fundamentally not quite right with that Mercedes car. I don't know if it's, obviously I'm not an engineer, but not a F1 engineer anyway. I don't know if it's just the aero or if it's the package of the aero and the power unit, or if it's the power unit packaging. Oh, I don't know what it is. But if you look at that car when it's going around, it just doesn't have the grunt and the sort of precision that you've come to expect from Mercedes over the last 7-8 years now. If you look at their cars from like 2020, even last year, the car was, which was sort of somewhat curtailed by the regulation changes. The car still turned on a sixpence, and they had incredible speeds, on circuits which had long straights, all the rest of it. But yeah, Mercedes have been quite badly affected by these 2022 regulations, I'd say. If you look at the way that the car is, effectively twerking all the way down these long straights and stuff, it's just, they just haven't got their head around it. And unless they bring a sort of fundamental redesign, I don't know how well they're going to hold on. They're not going to keep P2 in the constructors. I think it's safe to say the Red Bull will overtake them pretty damn soon. And it was only Red Bull's misfortune that gave Mercedes that position in the first place. But like I always say on these podcasts, you play the hand you were dealt, and both Red Bulls just conked out in front of the Mercedes. So it's a golden opportunity. You take it, obviously. But it doesn't tell the entire story, because the Red Bull, Ferrari are their team to beat this year. We can see that, and Red Bull are pretty damn close behind them. I would argue that Mercedes are best of the rest this year, and I don't see them catching up to. I don't see maybe they'll get closer to Red Bull. I could be completely wrong, and in a few weeks I could be on this podcast sitting here going, well, bugging me sideways, wasn't I wrong? Look at Mercedes, woohoo, here we go again. But from what we've seen so far, I just can't see it coming. I cannot see that happening, because there just seems to be such a deficit between them and the top two teams that, yeah, they're just, soon they're going to be, I reckon they're going to be sort of like 70 points behind or something after a couple of races. And yes, and they're just going to, even if they do bring all the upgrades in the world, we saw how much effort that took last year for them. And this year they're just, they're starting with one hand tied behind their back effectively. So it's just, I just don't see how they're going to make up all that difference and what they're going to change. Call me a cynic, and obviously I am a Red Bull fan, but please take this with a pinch of salt. It is nice. No, nice is not the right word, but to see another team at the top is hello. Sorry, my cat's just walked in, and I just heard a squeak from behind me. It is nice to, no, nice isn't the right word again. It's good for F1 that we have a different team at the top who has become the team to beat. In fact, I'll describe it as much like a kind of Red Bull. It's refreshing. So I just don't see how Mercedes are going to get that far up the field this year, and I'm going to shout now.
I have never heard anybody describe a can of Red Bull as refreshing.
No, I think sickly is the word.
Speaking of Red Bull, then, Ray, Red Bull obviously P3 at the minute in the constructors, but as we've mentioned 3 times already, it's because they had that double DNF in Bahrain, but that's what the stats will say at the end of the season. But we know that they're going to be competitive in terms of the top 2 teams this weekend. However, as I think it was Jawad that pointed out, they've not historically done well in the hybrid era of Formula One at Albert Park. Do you think that this time things will be different?
I'm thinking it could be different, but I think the thing to be concerned about with Red Bull is the reliability, because ever since Red Bull took over, in the sense from Honda on the engine side, things haven't been so good. In fact, it's actually been somewhat reminiscent of the McLaren Honda days, where we had Yuki Tsunoda break down on the formation lap last in Saudi Arabia, and if memory serves me correctly, the same thing happened in Bahrain. So there's a concern about reliability. It's not because you can have a fast car, but if you don't have reliability, you're not going to win anything. It's not about being the fastest, but also having the reliability to finish the race, because as we saw in Bahrain, it just wasn't there. So I'm thinking if Red Bull can somehow make the changes within the 2 weeks they had between Saudi Arabia and Australia, they could do something to the engine side to fix the reliability gremlins. I think Red Bull are well placed, to put up a strong fight in Australia and hopefully do well and end their rotten streak of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we saw in 2012 with McLaren, who arguably had the fastest car of the season, they had horrible reliability. And, at the end of the day, they didn't beat Red Bull for that season. But yeah, on to P4, Jawad, Alpine. A lot has been said about the way that they handled their race strategy between their 2 drivers last race. Should they have been allowed to race each other in certain times of the Grand Prix? But, how do you see them moving forward this weekend?
They're in a good position. They seem competitive enough, and especially when you've got other teams behind them as well. I personally enjoyed watching Alonso and Ocon go at each other. Not that it mattered for Alonso in the end with that DNF, but Ocon getting his elbows out, being a bit more, let's say, cleaner about his racing and overtaking as well at the moment. So it's hard. We could talk about the entire midfield and still not come to a conclusion about who's there. Mercedes definitely seem, like you guys said, definitely seem to be at the top of that pile. But I don't feel like Alpine have a car that's quick enough to be where they are at the moment, but they're there on circumstance and the fact that they've had some points finishes, which has been good for both cars, and then of course just Ocon in the previous race. How they'll go this weekend, that's just see how it all shapes up. And once we get first practice underway, we'll get a read at who's quick. If you qualify in the top 10 here, that's amazing. Good job, well done. That could potentially be where you finish during the race if there's no overtaking. But, as we've seen, these guys, Alonso and Ocon in particular, aren't afraid to get their elbows out and will put on a bit of a show. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. We really want a show. And also, one of the things that I am kind of looking forward to with the Alpines in Australia is I'm not going to look at their car and immediately think Racing Point, because they're going to the actual livery for the season as opposed to the um, Middle Eastern Special, which was just the whole pink BWT. And whilst I like it, I look at that car and I see Racing Point because, that's just what I see. But it's going to be nice to be thinking, hey, that's Alpine rather than a car that hasn't been on the grid for 2 seasons.
It definitely looks a lot better with the pink accents and whatnot, rather than just being all pink. Having that pink and blue combination looks a lot more better, I'll admit. So that'll be good to see too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tom, onto a car as well that also looks a lot better this season than I was expecting. The Haas is really performing, it seems. They've got Kevin Magnussen in, who has clawed 12 points for a team that, didn't even score that many points in the last 2 seasons combined. They've really sort of, obviously, there was a whole other aspect in play, but they've really played a blinder with getting Kevin Magnussen back in that car.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see K-Mag back in the car, and having both him and Hulkenberg so chatting to each other in the last 2 races was quite funny as well. After they offered an encounter with each other in Hungary in 2017, I'm going to leave it at that. It's done good for Haas. Not just in the sense that they've got a good driver with a sort of decent track record in F1. Scored a podium on his debut for McLaren at Australia, nonetheless. And yeah, it's just it's just a whole aura around the team. They just seem so happy and just vibing and just everything's Gucci. And because if you looked at them when Mazepin etc. were there last year, the whole team felt like had this sort of horrible, like, deathly weight to it, and it was just awful. It just felt like it just felt like a horrible place to be. And the car was awful, and Mazepin Senior was threatening to put his money and all the rest of it. But having K-Mag back in now into a car that has to put their resources into, having a decent driver in a decent car, he's teaching Mick. The whole team looks happy. Everybody's getting good results. Mick will get points soon. He was on for a decent quali in Saudi Arabia until he had that pretty horrific accident. It's good to see that he is back up and he's fit and fighting, and he's he's walking around, all the rest of it. Sensible decision, I think, by Haas on multiple fronts to not race, because he'd have just been, he was just finances, all the rest of it. But having K-Mag back in that car, it is nice to see him back. I think there's maybe a sense of almost unfinished business, or perhaps not quite unfinished business, but he somewhat left F1 too soon, and to have Haas back scoring points. If you'd have told us last year or the year before that Mercedes would be battling on track, for position with Haas, and that Haas would be coming out on top, you'd have told people to get in the bin or something, because it's like there's no way on earth that would have happened. But Haas have, they're like a phoenix that has risen from the ashes. They've taken the new regulations in their stride. Both drivers are doing well. The team is happy. They are, they are firmly back in the midfield and back where they should be. And it's just so nice to see them back and doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mercedes had to sort out their gremlins, and Haas have had to sort out their Kremlins. And I came up with that whilst you were talking. I couldn't resist.
I like that. That was good.
Yeah. Thank you. Ray, on to Alfa Romeo, who also seem to be doing, rather well this season compared to where they were last season. They've got a car that works. The Ferrari power unit is delivering, and that could also be another example as to why the Haas is doing really well. But as we've mentioned, Australia is a bit of an interesting circuit. How do you see Alfa Romeo performing this weekend?
I would expect Alfa Romeo to have a pretty solid weekend. They've demonstrated some pretty good performance over the past few races. But there's one thing I think, we need to keep on the lookout, which is the gearbox and the transmission, because in the past two races, we have had both drivers having problems, with Joe dropping from his starting grid position all the way to the back of the field because of anti-stall. I think that's something that Alfa Romeo need to get on top of ASAP, because these kind of issues is the kind of issues that will affect their result, because they have the car that can deliver results, but if they can't fix these issues, it's going to drag them down. And we have to look on the operation side of things as well. I think you could say that Alfa Romeo haven't exactly been on being at the top of the game operational wise since last season. We saw all kinds of errors from the team, and that happened once again in Saudi Arabia, where Joe had to serve an extra penalty because they didn't serve the penalty correctly the first time around. So I think Alfa Romeo has to reflect on what's gone on the past couple years on the ops side, and on the software side of things. If not, I think it's going to be I won't say it's disappointing, because they are performing better than we expect, but I think it's just not going to be such a great result from a performance standpoint, because they are actually wasting the car's potential.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, having to do a penalty again because you didn't serve it correctly, it's a bit amateurish, but they'll take it as a learning experience. I'm fairly certain they'll never do that again. Because imagine being the first, possibly the first team in history to just not do a penalty properly, more than once in a season. Yeah, you'd hate to be that team. But Jawad, moving on to Alpha Tauri, obviously Pierre Gasly had a horrible Bahrain. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, scored points. And they're currently sitting on 8 points in the championship and P7 ahead of three teams. Obviously, last season, we saw Pierre Gasly consistently fighting for, like P6, P7, P5. Do you think that they've got the tools at the minute to be fighting for these positions? Do you think they're going to be competitive this weekend in Australia?
They've certainly got the tools. It's the reliability that concerns me, and the problem that Pierre Gasly had in Bahrain resurfaced with Yuki Tsunoda in the last race. So what's next? Is that something that the Red Bull family altogether have had a look at, after the first two races, what's going on with the power unit side, like, what we were saying earlier as well, has it kind of slipped into how it was with their partnership with the Honda partnership with McLaren, because that could potentially derail not only Red Bull's campaign, but then AlphaTauri as well, who, like you say, they are great, on the days that they're great. Pierre Gasly, such a consistent performer, qualifying in the top 10, getting to Q3, and then just being in the points, often being, that fourth quickest car on race day. And then for Tsunoda, after being so inconsistent last year, the hope was that this year he'd be able to hit the ground running and be able to put in those performances to not, let's say, beat Gasly as such, but, to be there or thereabouts, and to be able to stay out of the walls and to not damage the car, not be as erratic as we saw at times last year. And, we certainly saw a glimpse of that there in Bahrain, where he finished 8th. But yeah, so far, both cars haven't finished the race together, or the two races we've had so far. So they'll be just hoping that, if they can start the race even this weekend, not have what happened last time out, but to just bring both cars to the checkered flag. And if they score points, then that's great.
Yeah, the one thing that any of the Red Bull powertrain cars need this season is just consistency race to race, I think. Like you say, AlphaTauri just need both cars finishing the race at this point. Tom, on to McLaren, and what a kind of sad story it is for them, but Lando Norris got some points out last time around. Is this the start of, a untimely resurgence? Obviously no one saw McLaren fighting over, the last points position to be happening this season. What do you think is going to happen? Danny Ricciardo's got his first home race as well, as we've mentioned.
Yeah. No, I don't think this is a start of a resistance for McLaren, unfortunately. I think that car does have some bigger issues than they perhaps first realised. I was very hopeful for McLaren coming into this year, so I'm sure a lot of us were, especially after a pretty damn good 2020 and 2021. But they seem to have taken a few steps back, unfortunately. As to whether, I know Lando got points last time out in Saudi. He did have a bit of fortune his way in the sense that there were two cars in front of him that retired. If not more, I can't quite remember. But it made his position somewhat overinflated. He still had a good drive in the first place to get his car there. But McLaren, oh boy, this is going to piss some people off. McLaren are fighting with one hand tied behind their back. And that proverbial hand is Daniel Ricciardo.
I can't believe you're saying this ahead of the Australian Grand Prix.
I know, and I could feel Jawad actually burning into my, with his retinas burning into the back of my skull. Danny Rick hasn't been the same ever since he left Red Bull. He started to get somewhere at Renault, and he showed some glimpses of it last year. He had some good races, but we've seen far too much of him being so not inconsistent, but just behind his teammate. Not getting out in Q1. Not getting out in Q1. Not making it to Q3, finishing outside the points many times. Yes, I know he won in Monza, and that was an example of when he'd had a good weekend all around. Excuse me. Sorry, I've got hiccups. But that was contrary to what Netflix want you to believe. That wasn't like that wasn't like he was reborn. That was almost like a false dawn. I'm sorry, like I'm spitting bare bars here, but it's just because McLaren haven't got two drivers who are sort of like not even right up there, but like consistently in the points all the time. If you look at Carlos Sainz, if you look at what he did when he was at McLaren, bearing in mind he was there in 2019 when they were slowly getting there, and then 2020, started to really get up there, and the team got up there. And then if you look at what he's doing with Ferrari now, and what he was doing last year as well, always just there, always just about in the points. Consistent, nothing sort of like nothing to some quote unquote thrown home about, but was always doing a good job. And McLaren are missing that with Danny Rick. He maybe he's past it. Maybe maybe he's never quite adopted to driving out of the Red Bull, because obviously each car has a different dynamic, or the rest of it. But just he's not going to be helping McLaren, and McLaren are going to struggle to move forward if they don't have two drivers who are who are consistent. I'm not saying that they that they're going to be that they need to be consistent podium contenders every week, because realistically they're not going to be. They need to build their way up. But we've seen it enough times with him now where, sorry, I've got something in my eye as well. It's all going on today. We've seen it time and time again with him where he'll just, just things just don't quite click. And, I don't know if it's an issue with the braking, because as we know, he was king of the late breakers, especially in that Red Bull. Some of those dive bombs he did, bloody hellfire, they gave me anxiety. But just, when he's in the Renault, just didn't quite get it. And then with the McLaren, he just doesn't seem to. It's something isn't clicking. I don't know. Maybe it's up there with him or what. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. But McLaren need to think about the future, because losing third place to Ferrari last year in constructors cost them in more ways than one. And I think Danny Rick's contract is up at the end of this year. Possible award is knocking on the door. We're talking about the expansion into America. Just saying.
Tom Downey predicts Daniel Ricciardo not at McLaren next season. Yeah,
No,
so
yes.
right. Moving on to the Aston Martins, who are currently having a bit of a horrible season, but they've got Sebastian Vettel coming back for this weekend. He's historically done very well around Albert Park. Do you think this is what Aston Martin needs, like giving the new a new boost and a fresh boost to the team after obviously missing one of their two drivers with COVID? And also, do you think, we heard a lot of complaints from Lance Stroll last time out about how horrible the car was. Do you think there's any chance that they might have fixed some of those issues?
I think it's definitely a boost for the team that Seb is coming back. I think Seb. I think the team probably uses Seb a lot. I think Seb is a very popular driver for a reason, and I'm quite sure that the reasons why the fans love him is also the reason why the team likes him a lot. So him coming back would definitely be a motivational boost for the whole team, I feel. But when it comes to the car, I can't really say so many good things, because if you look at it, Aston Martin, even though while they were forced in India, they were brilliant. They basically maximized their budget. But if you notice, ever since Lawrence Stroll has taken over the team, on the technical side of things, I feel like the team hasn't really performed so well. I mean, we saw how last year's AMR 21 didn't do very well because of the technical changes he introduced, and the team was just lost throughout the year. They were trying to figure out what's wrong with the car, but they just couldn't figure it out. And with the AMR 22, it's the exact same problem again. And this isn't like Aston Martin doesn't have the same kind of technical ability as Mercedes. Mercedes could salvage the, I think it was the W12 last year, to actually contend for the championship, despite it being affected by the aero regulations. But Aston Martin couldn't do that same thing with the AMR 21. So I really don't have much confidence that the team could turn things around in just 2 weeks, considering they couldn't even fix last year's car, within half the year. So I'm not really positive about Aston Martin in Australia. But I really do hope that Seb just get some points as comeback, because I think it will be a huge boost to the team as well as to himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that a good performance on your comeback obviously gives you momentum, and that's absolutely what Aston Martin need right now. Just something going forward. But a team who are definitely struggling, I would say, this season. Possibly one driver a bit more than the next, but Jawad, Williams P10. We hoped that the 2022 regulations would be the end of Williams's battles for no points. But currently, so far, that doesn't seem to be the case. Is there anything that you think like we can pinpoint that on, or is it just a matter of unfortunate circumstances and just not having the best luck?
It could be easy to. It would be just easy to say it's an unfortunate circumstance of the Mercedes power unit at the moment. As we know, all the Mercedes powered teams are struggling and whatnot. And, Williams have taken on a few more of Mercedes components from the factory team this year. But look at Haas, they've turned around their fortunes, having not developed last year's car at all. They had all that extra wind tunnel and CFD time that they got as a result of being last in the championship, like Williams had as well, being second last or whatever. So there shouldn't really be excuses in that instance. I think as well, the drivers probably need to step up their game too. I know for Alex Albon, it's only third race back since having a year out of F1, but the expectation was on him, to replace, in replacing George Russell, that he would be giving similar performances as we saw with Russell. And unfortunately, that hasn't really come to fruition yet. Poor Nicholas Latifi had a pretty horrible weekend last time out. And, I feel like there's got to be a bit more pressure put on him to given the fact that, Williams should be a team that could easily be fighting with Haas and with Alfa Romeo 4 points this year. If they're going to be out of that points battle once we get a quarter of the way through the season, then I see no hope for them to come back later on. And given the fact that, they've done a complete restructure of their technical departments, Jos Capito pretty much oversees everything. He's got his deputy there in FX Demazon as well. It's got to work, and they can't say, we don't have resources, we don't have the cash anymore, because that's all there for them. So similar to Aston Martin, they've got everything at their disposal. It's how they use it now, utilize it to be able to get the results, and also the organic piece that sits behind the wheel has to the driver has to also have the input as well. And I can't really predict anything good for Williams this weekend. I'm sure, one or both cars will drop out in Q1, and then they'll be, finishing outside the points. But that's definitely not what I expected for Williams coming into 22 after the last couple of years that they've had.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a unfortunate situation to be watching them after, they were clawing themselves back up after some horrible seasons. And I know we're only 2 races in, but, seeing them at the bottom again is really disheartening. But, we've covered the grid now. Let's have a look at some predictions. So, Tom, who's on that top step this weekend?
Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc.
Yep.
Cool. Ray, who's going to be on top for you?
Charles Leclerc.
Ooh, 2 out of 2 so far. Jawad, your top step on Sunday.
Let's go a bit different and say Carlos Sainz gets his first F1 win.
So we're expecting Ferraris currently. I'm also I'm gonna make it two each. So Carlos Sainz on the top step. I think now's a good chance for him to get that first victory. So yeah, the rest of your podium then, please, Tom.
Sorry, my head just ran out of battery. You pick the order, but Max and Perez.
Interesting. Ray, the rest of your podium, please. P2 and P3.
Verstappen and Sainz. I think Sainz in P3, Verstappen P2.
Jawad.
Leclerc and Verstappen second and third.
So Ferrari 1-2 with Verstappen coming home in P3. I'm gonna say Sainz, Leclerc, and then I really want to not say Verstappen.
Say
my
it.
heart.
Say it.
Verstappen P3.
Thanks, Ruby.
It hurts me so much. Yeah, so how about a bit of a bold prediction now then? So this is, something, bold. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but it'll be funny if it does. So Tom, your bold prediction for this weekend, please.
Hamilton scores more than 1 point.
There was a time when that wouldn't have been bold, and I'm really sad
No, I
about
know.
that.
All right, no, go on. I'll give you a real one. Danny Rick gets a point at least.
That is particularly bold.
I know.
Ray, your bold prediction, please.
Give me a moment, let me think about this. I have 2 in my head now. One of it is Mercedes will only have 1 car in the points. And the other is that Aston Martin scores a point.
Interesting. Jawad, your bold prediction, please.
I will say that we will get rain during the second half of the race.
I mean, you're the Australian person here. Is there something we don't know?
Well, currently there is like a 30% chance of showers in the afternoon next Sunday, but Melbourne weather is about as predictable as going to Monaco and putting going to the casino. So yeah, who knows? I mean, it might not rain at all. It looks pretty good the weather wise for the weekend, but there's always that slight chance we might get a little bit of a drizzle, and that might change up how the end of the race looks. So I'll put that as my bold prediction.
Fair enough. I'm gonna put all 20 runners to finish as my bold prediction, because currently it's been a season of DNFs, really. But yeah, it'll be interesting seeing if we can get 20 cars across that line. But now is a good chance to give you guys an opportunity to promote. So, Tom Downey, you're from Everything F1. You come to us on loan. Give us, what is Everything F1? Where can people find it? / you.
So me personally, I wouldn't bother. I don't have Twitter or anything. But Everything F1, you can find us across all your socials with the handle at joinef1. We have our website, everythingf1.com, YouTube channel, Everything F1. Our Facebook page is the Everything F1 Paddock. The group is Everything F1 Paddock. And last but by no means least, we have our Everything F1 podcast, which goes out weekly, usually around a Wednesday, where we do race reviews, previews, all that good stuff. But we also have a wide variety of guests, look at news, predictions, and generally just lark about a bit. You can find that across all your favorite podcasting platforms. I'm not going to list them because I can't think that fast.
Thank you very much. Ray, the Every Ray Day Motorsport podcast. Go and give us something about it.
So, well, you can find me on Twitter at everready, with a double R and A _ MSPRT, because Twitter doesn't like me write M Sport. And you can find me on YouTube at Every Ray Day Motorsport. I haven't posted anything this year because I've been a bit busy, but there'll be things coming soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And people do go and check that out. Jawad, the Hit the Apex podcast and / yourself.
So got the Twitter account at Hit the Apex Media. You'll also find a link tree there to all my other stuff as well. And I've just recorded my latest episode today, so that should be out there on the podcast world. A little bit of a preview for next weekend as well, and I'm more looking forward to the reviewing the race the following week, because then I get to tell you all about how much of a good time I had.
And whether it rained in the second half of the race on Sunday, but
that too.
Yeah, I am currently just the host of F1 Grid Talk. But if you want to follow me on socials, it's at Rubes, RUUPEZ, or any variety of that, depending on what platform. Already had an account with those tags. But yeah, Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. There you go, Tom. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment. You can get your hands on some official Grid Talk merchandise on f1chronicle.com/store. Also, make sure you're subscribed so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty of more F1 content, and we'll be sticking around on YouTube to answer any questions, maybe discuss some things that we missed. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for joining me, guys.
Pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Recording stopped.
We've stopped the recording. We've got a couple of comments and stuff, and yeah, let's just get straight down to them. So, Ross Panucci, Schumacher will keep the unbeaten lap record due to the new circuit changes. That's something we didn't consider.
I don't think that's going to be the case, because these cars the lap times are meant to be a lot quicker around this new configuration. So I did see that comment earlier and thought I'd get some numbers up. So only been the racing line for the new circuit is 5.231 kilometers. The old racing line was 5.259, and they did predict that lap times could drop from minute 21 seconds to minute 15 seconds. So whether that happens, we'll see this weekend. But that, I guess, Michael Schumacher's old record probably will stand in because it's that old configuration of track. But yeah, we should definitely see quicker lap times around this new configuration this weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point. It always makes me laugh when we see who is it? Pedro De La Rosa has got the lap record on. Is it Bahrain? No, it can't be Bahrain. Where is it?
Just looking. And Montoya as well having the lap record around Monza, I believe.
It's just we've got such quick cars, and at the same time the lap records are from 2005, 2006, 2000 and whenever it was.
Yeah, you're right. It was Bahrain.
Yeah, Bahrain. I thought so. But yeah, I think it is a good opportunity for when we do have different layouts of tracks and stuff to have the lap record being for that particular layout, as opposed to overwriting history when people aren't beating that time because it's a different circuit layout, even if it is just shaving off a chicane. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how, because the Abu Dhabi 2021 Grand Prix, the reconfigured circuit for that, I think did a lot for the race. And at the end of the day, as much as controversial things happened during the Abu Dhabi 2021 Grand Prix, you couldn't deny that the on-circuit racing was helped by the new configuration, particularly in that middle sector.
Bruce, what happened at Abu Dhabi 2021? I can't remember.
We went motor racing.
It's called a car race.
That's all I'm at liberty media to say.
Toto, it's called a motor race, okay? So I know that's a terrible accent, but it's just I want to clip that sound file.
What else have we got? A couple of comments from Lenham. Gasly's performance was definitely hindered by his food poisoning during the race in Jeddah. I think as soon as the reliability is there with the engine, they are competing to be the number 5 team. Yeah, I saw something about this. Apparently he was in severe pain by the end of the race.
Yeah. I heard that. So I've forgotten about that. So thank you to the comments of pointing that out. Actually, someone mentioned it last week, I think, and they said apparently he was so bad, his engineers are trying to get him to retire because they thought he was, they thought he was really, really ill. Well, which he obviously was, but they thought to the point where he wouldn't be able to drive the car.
Yeah, so it also ties into a comment from another comment from Leon, which was, can we talk about how physically demanding the driving is in these cars compared to the previous generation? It does seem as though they are being shook around, and especially in the cars that are suffering from the porpoising, it's very physically it's physically demanding anyway. They train in, what would you call it? High G training. And then at the same time you get thrown around by your car whilst you're suffering from food poisoning and stuff. So much going on. A comment from Jesse. Hello friends, hope all is well. Is all well with you 3?
I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah. And also thanks for the stream from Liam as well. You're welcome.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for watching whilst we were live.
Yeah.
It is nice. Was there anything that you guys thought that we could have anything else we could have discussed whilst we were on? I haven't really seen much more news this week other than, the Las Vegas stuff and something that wasn't news.
I just want to say something on the Vegas thing.
Yes, go on.
something that I didn't say, and this isn't Tom's talks or whatever he says. As we know, in the past, F1 fans, certainly a certain type of F1 fan, has been very reticent to change, very reticent to having new circuits, new countries. They're very much, F1 is a European thing. We want to go to Spa, and they want the old Hockenheim ring. Or you know the kind of fan I'm on about.
Yeah.
This Vegas race is going to bring a lot of money to F1, which, like I said, will in turn offer some more sustainability for races which perhaps struggle with funding, such as Spa, so some of the rest of it, because of the ludicrously high entry fees. Also, if this circuit brings overtaking, brings wheel-to-wheel action, brings racing, are you still going to hate it because it's new? Places like Monaco, it is just a procession, but people seem to think the absolute world of it, largely because of the sort of history and the name of it. Whereas, is it really that good a race to watch? Qualifying is amazing, don't get me wrong, because it's the absolute limit. But this new circuit that's just coming to Vegas, if it offers good racing, just give it a chance. Don't write it off before it's even arrived. Just because maybe on the face of it, it might not look that good from the diagrams we've seen. We don't know how wide the corners are going to be. We don't know I don't think we're going to put the start and end of the DRS activation points. We don't know where they're going to put the detection zone. All we've seen is a rough outline, which does resemble a pig, ironically. But just before everybody starts jumping down the throats of this new circuit, let's just see what it has to offer, because it may well do a Baku, which has given us some absolute bangers over the last 2 years. Not every race. 2019 was quite dull. 2016 was quite dull. But 2017, 2018, last year, outstanding races. And I think
the first the first Azerbaijan Grand Prix being dull was more of a response to how horrendous the F2 race was, where there was something like 4 or 5 safety cars.
Yes,
we need to take it easy. We need to finish this circuit.
And then in 2017, the drivers just went lol, and just absolutely yeeted it around the corners. So let's just give Vegas a chance. If the circuit turns into obsession, I will happily eat my words. But F1 are trying something different. They can't, you can't blame them for that. They're moving with the times. Do you remember when there was a massive sort of outcry from the sort of elder statesmen of F1 fans, but when F1 got taken over by Liberty Media and more stuff started coming out on social media, people are like, oh my God, this isn't F1. Shut up, you arsehole. Yes, it is. It's also the future. It's also the way things are going. It's also reaching out to more people. Look at Drive to Survive. Take the over dramatized elements out of it. That's done wonders for F1. So let's not sit here and sort of like cry foul of everything that's going on with with Vegas and all the rest of it. Let's give it a chance before people write it off.
Yeah. We've had a comment on this from Leon. Thank you for being very active in the chat today. It's the balance between historic versus best racing versus money/revenue. I can't imagine an F1 season without Silverstone, for instance. That just has historic importance. And we've also had a comment from Louis. Hey, Louis. I'll give Las Vegas one race to see what it's like. I'm still not convinced on Miami, but I guess we'll see what it is like soon. Yeah. Did you guys have anything to add on that, Jawad or Ray?
Yeah, not to add too much, but I've made it clear that I'm keen to look forward to Vegas and see how that goes. But circuits like even though we never saw it, Vietnam, Saudi, Miami as well. I'm not a big fan of these super technical street tracks. We don't need more of those kind of tracks. Baku, Singapore, poor. A couple of them are enough. Vegas will be its own spectacle, and I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, going for that same formula of street track every time is not something I'm particularly a fan of.
I think I agree with Jared on what he said about these street circuits. I personally have not been someone who really likes street circuits. I actually want to see more venues in F1, but I just want less street circuits because, I mean, apart from Baku aside, how many of these street circuits are actually, really good races? Because I can tell, I mean, if you ask me, for example, my own home race, Singapore, I will admit sometimes it can be a bit dull because, of how the corners are like. And, it can be a bit sleepy on certain occasions, unless the 2019 race, that was probably a good one. But yeah, I just feel like these kind of street circuits, we should have like a set amount of street circuits, and that's enough for the year, because I think we don't want to keep you don't want to see a procession. And personally, I feel like, if I could, I would actually change the Singapore Grand Prix circuit here and there just to make it a bit more raceable, because in its current state, even with the 2022 cars, I'm not entirely optimistic, about the overtaking, because I'm not sure you remember, the segment that goes under the grandstand. It's not good for overtaking at all because of how narrow it is. And if we got rid of that, we will actually have a pretty good flowing sector 3, and it will help with overtaking throughout the track.
Yeah, I'm also of a similar opinion on street circuits, in the sense that, like, I think we have a lot of them, and it's more a matter of the level of like behind the scenes stuff that goes on in order to make them suitable for F1 racing. You've got to basically close down streets for almost an entire week as well, but you've got to make sure that there's manhole covers covered up and stuff, so we don't see drivers going at, what was it, Monaco 20, I can't remember when it was, but a car obviously drove over like a grate. It, because of the pressure, it burst up and smashed someone's wings and stuff. That's obviously one of the risks that you've got with street circuits, but also they are tight, they are twisty, and we don't tend to see that good in terms of racing, particularly wheel to wheel stuff, because it's either thin and narrow, or where it is wide, it's so wide that it's not suitable to be going side by side in, because it's just covered in marbles or whatever. But also, I just like seeing established venues. I think that's something we need a bit more of. Yeah, there is that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to that's right. I've said my piece. I'll shut up now.
Yeah. All right.
I see. Oh, sorry.
Go on. I'll go on.
Oh, just Laylom's latest comment about street circuits being punishing to drivers just because there aren't any runoffs. I also, I know this is not possible because of safety and having other categories like MotoGP and stuff racing at the same tracks as F1. But if we're talking about, runoff and all that sort of thing, let's bring back gravel traps, but that's not possible with a lot of those tracks. So that would be another way of making it extremely punishing to drivers too, because give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those track limits things as well. You see it all the time, like if they can't actually put the wheel there, they won't put a wheel there. But then as well, at the same time, you get circuits like Paul Ricard and stuff, where just watching it can give people headaches. I mean, I'm currently getting motion sickness every time they go to the bloody helmet cam. And I don't really suffer from motion sickness whatsoever. It seems to be that's the thing that sets me off. But yeah, less of the stripy stuff around circuits and more of the, as much as it's probably not going to happen, more of the gravelly stuff. Yeah, I think that might be a good position to end the live stream. So thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you very much for the comments that have